Hello and welcome to Retech, and today we're going to talk about a PC, but not any PC. It's a bit of a game changer, this one. It was one that many people throughout Europe will know. I'm not so sure if there's a massive following in other countries such as the United States, but this was a PC that changed the landscape, and it changed the landscape for a lot of people, both home and professional users. Now, this PC came out at a time when the Amiga was launched, or just after the Amiga was launched. And if you remember the amount of money that a Commodore Amiga cost at the time, it was thousands and thousands of dollars and thousands of pounds. Now, the average IBM PC at the time was thousands of pounds and thousands of dollars. Most PCs at the time were very expensive, and then Amstrad came along and he changed the landscape. I've normally be quite down on Amstrad machines, but not in a kind of a completely negative way, but in a kind of a quality driven way, whereas the CPC was probably the exception to that rule. Now, this machine was very different. This kind of used Amstrad's philosophy of trying to get everything down, not just to a price, but also to a little bit of common sense. Because when he brought out his CPC range, he basically bundled them with a monitor, which made sense. It made sense for everybody concerned because you didn't have to rely on using your family television. Now, he did roughly the same with this machine. He realized that if he could bundle everything together with the monitor and have the power supply bundled in the monitor in the same or similar way that he did with the CPC range, he could bring the price down as well and cut costs. And also he tried to bundle a complete machine as well, which it made it slightly proprietary, because really once this monitor decided to kick the bucket, it was going to be very difficult to get the machine to work. You'd had to buy another Amstrad monitor and so on. And that's why a lot of these kind of ended up in the recycling or the trash or the garbage or the landfill, maybe less than a decade after they were purchased. But also Amstrad, or Alan Sugar at the time, realized that there was no point in building a all singing, all dancing, top of the range, brand spanking new machine when most people wanted a PC at that time for kind of business use, hobbyist use, etc., with the odd game. So he based it on what a lot of manufacturers would probably have called last year's model, and that's what he did. He basically based it on a chipset and a motherboard and a design set, which was probably 12 months behind the curve. But that didn't matter, and we'll come to that in a moment, why it didn't matter. But the biggest step was its desktop environment. Yeah, we are talking mouse and keyboard and a decent high-res monitor for what effectively was £5,000. You know, so really it wasn't a massive outlay for a lot of people. A lot of people were doing more than that on hobbyist and home computers, let alone a fully fledged PC. Now, the reason why he could bundle a mouse with a package was because he had a trump card to play, and that was the inclusion of a graphical user interface, and that was the GEM desktop. Now, GEM seems very familiar to a lot of people who have vintage and classic machines now. It should do, because it's what Atari based their desktop on. So the Atari ST ran a version of GEM desktop. This machine was steps ahead of just about anything else on the market, and it was steps ahead of really what Microsoft were doing at the time. This machine's been sat in the corner for quite some time. You've probably seen it on a lot, well, a big chunk of my videos just sat there doing nothing. That's because I haven't really done anything with it at all. I basically just powered it on and turned it off. I didn't check or try anything. So this is going to be a revealing video to me as well. So I'm going to have a look at this machine. We're going to look at the desktop environment and the machine as a whole itself, and then what we'll probably do if we find faults with it, which I'm sure we will because it's 1986 this model, we will then probably try and fix them and repair them at a later date, and I'll show you how that went on as well. So let's take a look at the Amstrad PC 1512, the computer, the PC that changed everything for a lot of people. Okay, so this is the Amstrad PC 1512, and it's remarkably good condition for what it is. It's 1986. It's the dual drive model. Now there were various models of these. They started off from the basic single drive, the SD, the dual drive, and the dual drive with a hard drive. But this is the step up model. This is the 1512 with the dual drive on it. I would like to get hold of a hard drive for one of these, but that probably wouldn't work now, so I'm going to have to find some other solution, but that's probably going to be in a video for later on. Now the keyboard is very IBM-esque. It's it has quite a nice feeling to it, but it's very kind of narrow. It's just different. You tend to kind of hit the wrong things because of the way the keyboard's laid out. I kind of think that, yeah, the stagger on it is not enough. It needs to be shifted slightly over, but that's a minor complaint. It's like every other thing, you do get used to them. The enter key and the cursor keys are a bit different. It doesn't have your control and alt keys, it has them here, so it's a bit alien as to where they are. Delete's okay, it's a nice decent key, and the keypad, it doesn't have a separate keypad on it. Okay, so it's just part of the number pad here, but other than that it survived very, very well. And the plastics on these are renowned to being a little bit on the budget side, but these are rock solid. These are really, you don't get any give in them at all. Even the keyboard case as well is very, very rigid, so you got to give Amstrad its due on that. The mouse on the other hand has yellowed a little bit, which is very odd because the rest of the computer hasn't. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's a different plastic, but that I'll have to sort of deal with that a little bit later. But again, solid. It's really solid. It's not flimsy. It doesn't creak, groan, or anything you know, untoward in the way that a lot of the microcomputers did at the time with their very cheap cases. So you've got to give credit where credit's due. It's a very well built system. To turn it on though, there's no power switch. You'll spend an age kind of feeling around the machine and around the back trying to find a power switch because everything's run out of the monitor. The monitor's the key. The monitor's the bit that actually provides the power to the machine, so you have to turn the monitor on first. To turn it on, you have to reach around the back and press the little on button, and you can hear it powering on. And the other thing, there's no static on the monitor. A lot of these monitors that have been kind of powered on after a while get a static crackling on them. This perfectly silent. It's got quite a nice tube on it. It's very clear. There's no burning on it, and it's just asking for a system disk. Now, with the Amstrad suite, you get this little package, and in it you get a bunch of discs, and these are the discs that are really make this machine kind of useful and shine. We have Microsoft MS-DOS on here, which is the OS. We have a few discs in this little case, and the disc 2 is the GEM startup disc. Okay, and this is copyright digital research in 1985, all rights reserved, followed by disc 3, which is your GEM desktop itself, followed by its DOS Plus and startup utilities, and it's also got paint on it as well. Basically, we're just doing a cold reboot, and what I'm going to do is use Microsoft DOS, which is disk 1 on this, which is the red disk. So we're going to use MS-DOS, and we're going to boot the system using this disk. So basically, I'm just going to put the system disk in, which is a little stiff, so I might have to do something to that drive, and then we'll see if it loads. While it's attempting to load, we're just going to cover some of the basics on this machine, just to give you an idea of what it was all about. The Amstrad PC 1512 was launched in 1986, so it's quite an old machine, and it was launched after the CPC, the 464, the 664 and the 6128, which were all home computers at the time. It was also launched after the PCW 9512, which was again a productivity computer by Amstrad, along with the 8256, which basically was a word processor. That's predominantly what it was used for. It was CP/M based, so they were all Z80 based. So Amstrad decided to kind of make a low-cost PC clone, and this was a fantastic success. I said it changed things, and it got to a point where more than 25% of the European computer market was actually this model. This particular model and its bigger sister were the machines that overtook the market. 25%. It was quite a cheap machine, as we said, but it was complete. It was complete. You had the software, you had the drives, keyboard, monitor, mouse. All you needed to do was to get a printer if you really wanted to go down that route. And it had a 57 watt power supply built into the monitor, and this is where things differ on these machines. And there were 8 models in the entire range. There was the 1512 SD and DD, which had 1 or 2 floppy disk drives, and there were 2 models with a hard disk, the HD10 and the HD20, which were 10 and 20 megabyte hard drives in the machines. Both the floppy drive and the hard drive models could be acquired with a monochrome monitor, and Amstrad used an enhanced CGA graphics mode on this, which could display 640 by 200 pixels in 16 colors or grayscale, so it wasn't a bad spec for the day. It was sold with MS-DOS 3.2 or DOS Plus, and that was the operating system from Digital Research, and Digital Research kind of hoped that that was going to take over the market, but unfortunately Amstrad shipped it with MS-DOS as well, so it didn't quite work out that way. And the GEM desktop was also used on the Atari ST, TT and Falcon, and it also included GEM Paint and GEM Basic. So this was around the time where GEM was kind of gaining a little bit of traction. So we're going to go from here. You can see it's installing the mouse driver, device driver, so the mouse will now function. If we have a look at what's on this disk, all we have is your basics. So you got sort, share, replace, recover, print mode, all of the kind of DOS basics, format, find fdisk and so on, all on here. So that's your little kind of subset of individual programs, including Xcopy, that make up DOS. Roughly most versions of DOS run in a very, very similar manner to this. So the next one is disk 2. So we'll go through the disks. We've got disk 2. Again, very, very good conditioned discs. I like the colours on them, they're great. So disk 2 is the next one, and this one has GEM. So it's now installing GEM or loading GEM from the disk. And it's loading the DOS Plus system files on here as well, because obviously GEM was built around DOS Plus. I can hear this drive squeaking ever so slightly, which you may not be able to hear on camera, but that means it's going to need a little bit of attention. Okay, so it's going to ask for the Gem desktop disk. So what we need to do is to put disk 2 for the Gem desktop system in here, which is this nice natty green disk. So we're going to install that and let that run through. So while that's having a bit of a run through, I'm going to have a little bit of a drink. So the first thing you kind of see is this. Looks rather familiar, doesn't it? And what I'll do is I'll zoom in on the screen, but one thing you might notice is there's a mouse, and it's a little bit sticky, but it does work and it does move around. So while we're going to zoom in on this, I'm going to basically give the mouse a quick clean and we'll come back to it in a second. Okay, so I've just changed camera so you can see this a bit better, and if you can hear any noise in the background, we're having another storm. It seems to be storm seasons now, because we had unfeasibly hot weather, massively unfeasibly hot weather, mainly because, you know, it's kind of autumn winter here, and we're having summer temperatures. It's a bit bizarre, but there you go. Payback's the odd storm every now and again. So the mouse, I've cleaned it up a little bit, but it still needs a little bit of work. So I'll do that when I do the refurb of this machine. But basically, Gem desktop, look at it, really on a PC. At the time, IBM PCs were all DOS based. You know, you type in your commands in to get it running. Everything was command line driven. It wasn't graphical user interface. Okay, so if we look at the desktop here, we have the usual icons that you'd see on a modern or modernish desktop. We have new folders. There's a basic program running on here, Gem apps. You've got your Doodle app, disk copy. You also have your floppy disk 1, 2 and your RAM disk icons, very similar to a modern PC really when you think about it, although nowadays it's a little bit more colourful. But this is a 16 colour monitor, so it's good enough, and this is a full colour system for the time. Now you have to compare that to the green monitors of the IBM world, or the black and white monitors of that same world. So this is a massive step up. So if you go to Gem apps, everything runs off of this. So at the minute we've just got a blank system. So new folder, you can add a new folder, put a new folder name in, etc., and it will allow you to create new folders on that device or this disk. And every now and again we get a drive A isn't responding, so I don't know. We do have a bit of an issue with drive A. There we go, it works. So it does need a bit of a cleanup, so that's a job we have to do. So this is basically very similar to a modern system. So if you go into Gem Desk, there we go. We got new desktop, new folder, desktop applications, and your RAM disk. So everything on here relates to the system itself. So really, this really needs to run off of an internal hard drive. It would be so much nicer. It's getting a bit squeaky, so it does need a service. Okay. So basically this is Gem, and it's a very, very decent system when you think about it compared to, you know, its forerunners, which were command line orientated. So what we'll do is we'll put in drive B, and so we'll check that one out as well. So we've got utilities and Gem Paint on here. So again, if we had a built-in hard drive, all of this would be on there anyway. So we'll go down to floppy disk B. It's a little noisy, but you have things like auto exec, which is normal, alarms, prints, show, command, You got your device commands there, so it's basically an extension to the OS itself. So if we scroll down, we just have commandcompmode.com, national message, etc. So yeah, so you need to install it, really have it running on a hard drive. That would be the best way forward. So on this machine itself, other than the Gem desktop, which I really want to get a hard card for it, or a hard drive, you can access things like Paint. So if we go into Paint, we will see it's probably very similar to most of the Paint apps, but at the time it would have been a bit of a revelation, because other than the kind of the Apple Macintosh, which was just breaking through at the time, and you've also had the Amigas breaking through at the time, you had a full color desktop, or 16 color desktop as this is. And if you compare this to the Macs of 1985-86, this is an infinite step up, really. So it's just clicking on your color you want and where you want to draw it, etc. There we go, blue. This mouse really needs looking at, but basically you get the idea. Okay, you've got your textures on this side, and it's a good little Paint desktop. And as you install new programs on it, if you were using it on a hard drive, it would make a very, very good desktop. So this machine was well ahead, really, in the stakes of IBM PCs for the, not just for the home user, but or the professional user, but for the hobbyist. So this is one of the models where I say that Amstrad got it just about 100% correct. I would have probably preferred it if he'd put this power supply out of this monitor into the desktop unit itself, because I guarantee you there's enough space inside the case, so you had one of each, so if one failed you didn't take the other one down with you. But 1986, 35 years old, and this monitor is as bright as it came out of the factory. The machine works incredibly well. The mouse needs a little bit of cleaning and attention. The desktop unit itself is in very good condition. The two floppy drives, they haven't been used, so I think the bands are a bit stiff and they need a bit of a refurb and probably heads cleaning on them. It doesn't seem like they need realigning. It's the bands, it's slipping, so you can hear it when it's trying to start up sometimes. That's why you have to release the disc, but nothing serious. There's no batteries in it. There's real-time clock batteries which sit under the monitor, but these have been taken out a long time ago. The battery compartment's clean, so this machine is in very good condition, and I can see why this machine got the foothold it did, and it is a game changer. This machine's also been upgraded to 640k as well, so it's actually got a lot more extra memory. So really, this is a brief overview of this machine. I'm going to do a strip down, clean up, refurbish, and put it back to as new, although it doesn't need a massive amount of work. And I'm going to try and find a hard drive for it. That's my next step. And I'm going to put this machine to work, because it can run a lot of vintage and classic games. But as I said previously, this machine was a step behind. It uses an Intel 8086, so it's just not quick. It's running at about 8 megahertz, okay? So this is a very, very peculiarly slow machine. So this is a very, very slow machine when you compare it to later models, or models of its vintage, as in models of the year this was released. I would have been more than happy to have this as my only desktop. I would have been more than happy to have this as my only computer at the time. So yeah, this is where they got it right, and it shows. It's just a long-lived machine which has still got a lot of life. There's no humming from the monitors, and I'm absolutely blown away by the condition this machine's managed to stay in. So anyway, that's a quick overview of the Amstrad, and it's got a bit of a list of what I need to repair on it. Okay, so this is the Amstrad 1512, and it's just a brief look at what the machine's all about. I'm going to do the work to it to refurbish it, and I'm going to actually put another video with the kind of overview of the physical hardware itself, but it was this and the price that really was a game changer for this machine. And I think that, you know, it's kind of overlooked in the annals of PC history, and I think this machine really deserves a lot more credit than it actually gets. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed this brief look into the Amstrad files, and I hope you'll join me in the future for more adventures on this machine. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.